What really happened above the South China Sea that Sunday afternoon? Two U.S. Navy aircraft, an MH-60R Seahawk helicopter and an A-18F Super Hornet, fell into the sea within 30 minutes of each other. No enemy missiles, no storms, no warning signs, just two of America's most advanced machines plunging into the waves in broad daylight. It sounds almost impossible, yet it happened. How could the world's most powerful navy lose two aircraft from the same carrier on the same day? Could this be coincidence, human error, or something far more unsettling beneath the surface? Was it a flaw in maintenance, a system stretched too thin after months at sea, or as former President Donald Trump suggested, a silent killer hiding inside the fuel tanks, contamination that may threaten the very heart of American naval aviation? These are the questions now echoing across briefing rooms in Washington and flight decks across the Pacific. Because if the mighty USS Nimitz, the pride of the fleet, a floating city that has carried the flag for nearly 50 years, can suffer two crashes in 1 hour, what does that say about the readiness of America's carriers? Are we witnessing an unlucky coincidence, or the first warning sign of a deeper problem within the Navy's steel behemoths? And most of all, could something as ordinary as dirty fuel bring down a multi-billion-dollar war machine? Think about that, and tell us what you believe in the comments. Because tonight we're diving deep into the story behind the headlines, the day the sky over the South China Sea went silent. It was October 26, 2025. The USS Nimitz was steaming through the South China Sea, homeward bound after months deployed in the Middle East. Her decks were alive with the rhythm of flight operations, jets launching, rotors slicing the humid air, crews in color-coded uniforms guiding aircraft beneath the tropical sun. At 2:45 p.m. local time, the tranquility shattered. A voice on the carrier's communication network reported, "Seahawk 73 down. Repeat, Seahawk 73 has gone down." The MH-60R Seahawk, belonging to Helicopter Maritime Strike Squadron 73, had crashed into the sea during routine operations. Within minutes, rescue helicopters and boats from Carrier Strike Group 11 rushed toward the splash point. Waves closed over the wreckage, but miraculously, all three crew members were pulled from the water alive and in stable condition. Relief spread across the ship, until 30 minutes later, disaster struck again. At 3:15 p.m., alarms echoed across the flight deck. "Super Hornet down! Super Hornet from VFA 22 has crashed!" The jet, a twin-seat A-18F Super Hornet from the Fighting Redcox Squadron, had been conducting a training sortie when something went wrong. The two aviators ejected, parachuting into the sea as recovery teams scrambled once more. They too were rescued, shaken, but unharmed. In less than an hour, the carrier lost two aircraft and barely avoided tragedy. For the men and women aboard the Nimitz, the question burned. What could possibly cause back-to-back losses like that? That night, as word reached Washington, the Pentagon confirmed both crashes and promised a full investigation. But before official findings could even begin, Donald Trump, back in the public spotlight, offered his own theory. Speaking to reporters, he said he believed the cause might be fuel contamination, something very rare, but it happens. Asked if sabotage was possible, he dismissed the idea. "I don't think so," he said firmly. "It's not sabotage." His words immediately set the tone for the media frenzy that followed. Could contaminated fuel really bring down two aircraft in one afternoon? Military analysts noted that both the Seahawk and the Super Hornet had been refueled from the same tanks aboard the Nimitz. If there were impurities, water, debris, or microbial growth, It could affect both aircraft almost simultaneously. Even the tiniest flaw in aviation fuel can have catastrophic results. Clogged filters, pump failure, engine flameouts. And yet, aboard an American supercarrier, every drop of fuel is supposed to be tested, filtered, and certified multiple times before it ever reaches an aircraft. So how could this happen? Life aboard a supercarrier is a dance of precision. The Nimitz, a floating city of 5,000 souls, holds massive fuel farms deep in her steel hull. Her purple shirts, the sailors responsible for aviation fuel, test each batch for purity, checking color, temperature, and particulate content. They use filters and separators recording every test in detailed logs. But by late October, the Nimitz was nearing the end of one of its longest deployments. It had left the West Coast in March 2025, operated in the blistering Middle East during the summer, and only recently crossed into the humid, unpredictable climate of the South China Sea. Months of heat, salt air, and nonstop flight operations can strain even the best systems. Water condensation inside storage tanks, microorganisms growing in warm fuel, or filter degradation after thousands of cycles, all can lead to contamination. If a single batch of JP5 fuel was compromised, 2 crashes in 30 minutes suddenly seem less mysterious. The Nimitz is no stranger to danger. Commissioned in 1975, it's among the oldest active carriers in the world, a legend that served in conflicts from the Cold War to Iraq. Yet even legends age. Engineers warn that extended deployments with minimal maintenance windows increase the risk of failure across all systems. The twin incidents over the South China Sea may be symptoms of an overworked ship and crew. In the last year alone, other U.S. carriers have suffered troubling accidents. In December 2024, the guided missile cruiser USS Gettysburg accidentally fired a weapon that destroyed a parked FA-18 aboard the USS Harry S. Truman. In April, another Super Hornet slid off the Truman's deck into the Red Sea. In May, a jet missed the arresting wire and rolled into the ocean, both pilots ejecting safely. No lives lost, but every incident chipped away at confidence in flight deck safety. Analysts began to whisper what few dared to say aloud. America's carrier fleet might be operating at its breaking point. Fuel contamination isn't a dramatic enemy you can see. It doesn't explode or attack. It just kills engines. When impurities mix with fuel, they alter combustion, block injectors, or cause pumps to seize. The MH-60R's twin T-700 turboshafts and the Super Hornet's F414 engines are marvels of precision. They demand absolute purity. A single droplet of seawater in the wrong place can unbalance the pressure ratios that keep a jet flying. Aviation engineers know this truth well. Cleanliness is survival. The Navy's mantra, clean, dry, bright, is drilled into every fuel handler. But even perfect routines are vulnerable to the chaos of the sea. Trump's remarks, while intended to calm speculation, ignited political debate. Was he preempting the investigation to show confidence, or pointing a finger at operational negligence? Some saw his statement as reassurance that America wasn't under attack. Others interpreted it as an implicit critique of current military management. Meanwhile, the Navy quietly reaffirmed that sabotage was not suspected. The message was clear. This was a mechanical, not a geopolitical, failure. Yet in an age of heightened U.S.-China tensions, the optics were uncomfortable. Beijing's state media immediately highlighted the crashes, portraying them as evidence of technical fragility within the U.S. fleet. Russian commentators echoed that tone. But Western observers countered that transparency, the willingness to acknowledge accidents publicly, was what distinguished American forces from their rivals. The world was watching how the U.S. Navy would respond. For the sailors aboard the Nimitz, the story wasn't politics, it was personal. When the Seahawk went down, rescue crews launched instantly. Within minutes, a second helicopter spotted the survivors clinging to their raft as waves battered them. Their pilot's last transmission had been routine. No distress call, no warning. 30 minutes later, when the Super Hornet fell, the crew on deck already knew what to do too. Training kicked in automatically. Locate, deploy, recover. As one sailor told USNI News, "You don't expect lightning to strike twice in one afternoon." Another admitted, "Everyone's asking the same thing. What's wrong with our fuel?" In the days that followed, the crew held a quiet ceremony on deck. They prayed not for the dead, but in gratitude that 5 shipmates were still alive. In the world of naval aviation, that counts as a miracle. By the end of October, the Nimitz turned east toward her home port at Naval Base Kitsap, Washington. For many aboard, it marked the end of an era. The carrier that had launched sorties over Afghanistan and patrolled the Persian Gulf was sailing home for perhaps the last time before retirement. Yet her final mission would be remembered not for triumph, but for questions. Could aging infrastructure and nonstop operations be eroding the Navy's margin of safety? Are logistical chains overstretched, maintenance routines compressed, and morale worn thin? Defense analysts argue that the Navy, despite unmatched global reach, is facing an internal crisis. Too many missions, too few ships, and too little downtime. The Seahawk and the Hornet might just be warning shots from within. The Navy's investigation will dissect every angle: maintenance logs, fuel samples, sensor data, pilot testimonies. But experts already outline likely lessons. First, quality control redundancy. Deployments in tropical zones require more frequent inline fuel testing. Second, maintenance rotation. Aircraft fatigue rises exponentially with long tours. Third, transparency. Delayed release of past investigation results, like those from the Truman, weakens public trust. And finally, modernization. The Nimitz class, for all its glory, was built for another century. The new Gerald R. Ford-class carriers feature digital monitoring and automated filtration systems that reduce human error. Progress is coming, but for now, sailors must live with the ghosts of old machinery. Internationally, the reaction was mixed. Allies such as Japan and Australia expressed relief that there were no casualties, but quietly worried about what the accident signaled for joint operations. China's and Russia's outlets amplified the story to question U.S. readiness. Yet the very fact that America publicly disclosed the incidents, rescued all crew, and invited scrutiny shows a kind of strength dictatorships rarely display: the strength to admit mistakes and learn from them. Transparency, not perfection, sustains credibility. As days turned to weeks, the sea reclaimed the wreckage, leaving only data recorders and unanswered questions. The image remains vivid: 2 aircraft vanishing beneath gray waves, 5 survivors floating under a vast sky, and a half-century-old carrier powering toward the horizon. Some call it failure. Others call it fate. But perhaps it's something else entirely: a wake-up call. Because the lesson of that day is brutally simple. Even the mightiest fleets depend on the smallest details. A droplet of water, a moment of complacency, a delay in maintenance. That's all it takes to turn dominance into disaster. The Nimitz's final voyage has become a parable about endurance, precision, and humility before the laws of physics. So what do you think really happened that day? Was it bad fuel, Random chance? Or the symptom of an overworked Navy stretched across too many seas? Could the next generation of carriers, like the Ford class, prevent such mishaps? Or will history repeat itself when steel meets salt and time? Drop your thoughts below. If this story made you question how fragile even superpower machinery can be, hit like, subscribe to NavyCast, and ring the bell for more deep dive analyses. Because out there, above the world's most contested waters, every drop of fuel and every decision can mark the line between flight and freefall.